Hello, everyone. So today we're going to go over just simple. We're going to start from simple, a little bit more advanced, but I'm going to explain to you guys how waves work the best of my ability. I've been looking at a couple different tutorials, and I don't really think that there are many very good examples for new beginners that kind of goes over that. And then on top of that, people don't really explain the differences of waves and things like that for like let's say if you had a campaign, let's say if you were making like just a normal firefight map or you wanted bosses or things like that. This is gonna kind of go over that and how to interact with it. But just right off the bat, just to start simple. So we've got different spawners here. We're not gonna use all of these in the video, but just to show you guys the different spawner types, we've got our 4 different ones now, which is kind of crazy because when it started, we didn't have this as an option. So you weren't able to spawn things. You had to manually put them inside of vehicles. But we got 4 different spawners. You can go into each one and you kind of customize it as needed. On what AI is spawned, on the behaviors of that, whether if it's blind, inactive, or whatever, triggered by scripting. So if you're scripting and using it to be triggered by scripting, let's say if a player enters a zone or anything like that, you do want to turn that on. If not, it should just start right off the bat. Um, this would also be good if you did not want, like, let's say you had firefight waves, you want to turn this on as well. And then let's go into, so that way they're not all turning on at the same time. But let's go into index groups are important. I definitely recommend kind of looking over this. Basically, what this means is just like spawning order preference. So if you had 2 of these, but the index was lower on one, and let's say you reached your max of 32, but this one was first or ahead of that one back there, this one would spawn first in the order whenever this space is freed, if that makes sense. So if this is 1 and this is 10, 2, oh, why does it do that? Oh, that's messed up. Then let's say you were at your max and these 2 were waiting in queue to be spawned. This one's going to spawn first and then this one. So group index is pretty important. Same for, you've got AI zone. So this is like, we've got an AI zone already placed on the map. So if you want the AI to move to this zone, and then for the zone, we've actually got, the wait time, which is until they move to the next zone. So if you want them to wait for a certain period of time, they will V-line after that time is up to the next zone. They don't slow down. They don't really stop and shoot things or whatnot. But they do kind of go to that next zone as fast as possible. And then on AI drivable vehicles, if there's a vehicle within the zone, then they're able to pick it up or drive it or whatever. But if there's not, or if it's off, then they will not touch that vehicle. So that's good to have. Uh, I always, with all of my um, spawners, I guess you call it, I always put wandering when idle on. So that way they look around and things like that. So players want to play a more tactical or assassin like role in your either your campaign or your forge map, then they can. And the AI move around and things. They interact with the map itself. But we're just gonna get straight into it. And I am not giving them distributors. I learned my lesson last time. We're gonna give them plasma pistols because I don't like finding distributors. So if you, for the vehicle spawner too, almost forgot to go over this. If this spawns them inside of the vehicle, they can leave the vehicle after the spawn, but we've only got 3 options here. Not many people use this, but it is useful. Um, if you need it, but just to kind of dive into this. So we're gonna start like a firefight match, or we're gonna talk about waves. So when we go into the script brain, and this is an empty script brain, I don't have anything else in the game. We're gonna simply go into wave management. So we've got a couple different options when it comes to AI events and things like that. We do need the wave to start after gameplay, but let's say I have just a very basic where's AI waves. We're gonna make a very basic manager here, and I'm gonna explain it to you guys the same way that was kind of explained to me. And so each wave manager is a conveyor belt as a way. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get the options, we're going to get the wave, get the wave options, we're going to plug this in here. Now you can take this and plug this in here as well. So these are completely interactable with each other. But let's say we want to make a simple firefight match where completing the first wave then spawns the next, right? And it really doesn't matter. It can be the same AI just for the tutorial purposes. And we are going to need a list here because they do expect you to plug things in and to have multiple, AIs or whatnot. So it does have to be plugged into a list. AI list right there. So we're going to talk about real quick. This would be kind of like what the setup looks like, but we're going to talk about the options. We're going to go into the in-depth, gritty nitty of what the different wave manager is, what the different wave settings are, and how they operate. So let's say that we have a wave right here. We're going to add on gameplay start a wave to a wave manager. So these are all your different wave manager types. So you have default, you have map, mode, user 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. These are all technically the same. We're going to use default just because, easy. Doesn't matter which one you choose. And then we're also going to add another wave to default, right? So first wave we're going to work on, and we're going to add it to the manager of default. So this is like its own variable in a sense. Then we're going to take the wave, right? And we're going to say, okay, what do we want in the wave? What kind of wave is this? What is this, These here are all the same as wave managers. So these are just a way to identify the wave. They're not necessarily a wave type. The boss is more so for you to identify it. So if you have a ton of, bunch of different waves set up and it's just overwhelming, the wave type you can set or reference to later in the future with some nodes that we're going to go over. But right now, we're just going to set it to default as well. The wave manager and wave type are completely different entities. Okay, just keep that in mind. Then we're going to set the duration of time for the wave. If you set it to 0, it's infinite. If you have any sort of time, right, like 5, then after 5 seconds, this is done and it's going to move on to the next one. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So then we're going to go to wave options here. We're going to do incoming wave. We want this to be on, and the outgoing we want on as well. I'll show you guys what that does here in a minute. Delay spawn until budget should always, always, always be on. You should always have delay spawn until budget. What this means is that you have a max of 32 AI units that you can have in the game. The delay spawn until budget just means that if you hit your max, that no other spawner will trigger until there's space. So you always want this on so that you're not skipping waves on accident and the game's not registering or triggering AI spawners before you have the space to trigger them, because then it just instantly they don't exist. So you always want that on. And then the extermination percent, we're going to do 100. What this means is when it reaches the extermination percent of 100%, of 50%, or whatever, then it can start the next wave. So there's a couple of different things here that we have, right? We have a couple of different ways to trigger the next wave. Even though the AI spawners are going to be the exact same, this part doesn't really matter because this is just what AI is inside the individual waves that we're making. So we're going to attach both of these waves to the default manager, right? So this is the identifier of the default. And then both wave types are going to be default. Doesn't really matter. We're going to need that later. But we want this one to be after 2 seconds, right? And then so what this is going to do is after 2 seconds of this triggering, it's then going to trigger this. But we want this to be infinite because we don't know how long this wave is going to take for the players to wipe out or to break everything or kill everything. So this wave is now infinite, and whenever players kill 100% of all enemies, then it triggers the next wave, right? And then let's say we want the same thing here, and then it's going to be the same and same. If you're going to use the same wave options, you should probably just tie this in here. And if you're going to use the same wave type, you can also tie it in there. What this does, right, is if you tie everything in, this is technically the wave itself. So this is like the wave, and what wave manager it's attached to. So you don't need the whole setup. Like this is completely different. This is just the settings of the wave. So the second you make a node like this, you're inadvertently already creating a wave. I hope that this makes sense. I know it's a little complicated. So let's go into it, right? It should trigger this AI spawner once, and then after it's been 100% terminated, it should trigger it again. So if I just kind of go into it,
Reinforcements. 2 enemies remain. Reinforcements.
just like that.
2 enemies remain.
So you'll notice that once I killed the first wave, right, then another one spawned. So there were 4 enemies in the first wave because we're using the same wave type. If you don't want that to happen and you want it to be completely separate, then you will have to do, you will have to clone this. But for my example, I wanted that to happen to show you guys the difference. So now, right, we have wave, and then we have the wave options. The wave options should not be important. Not enough to copy it.
Reinforcements. 2 enemies
Oh,
remaining.
maybe it is. Let's see here.
Reinforcements. 2 enemies remaining.
Okay, so maybe it's because we don't have an intermission. Let me create an intermission here real quick. So we're gonna do default is fine, and then we're gonna change the wave type to intermission. So intermission is really the only one that's significantly different than the other wave types. And we're gonna do duration of seconds for the intermission to be 5 seconds.
Reinforcements. 2
Oh,
enemies remain.
I know why this is triggering wrong. So if we go into here, right, we forgot to trigger scripting on. So the second the gameplay starts, this was triggering twice. So now when we go into it, right, we've got 2 enemies, and if I kill both of them, it's gonna wait 5 seconds, and then it's gonna spawn the next wave.
Reinforcements. 2 enemies
Just like that.
Last enemy.
And so let's say we want to reuse this, right? We should be able to now because we found out what the issue was. We should be able to just go into it.
Reinforcements.
Yep. So the reason it was spawning 4, the reason it was spawning 4 before is because I forgot to turn the setting on the actual spawner to be triggered only when the player, or only when by scripting. Sorry. And then if we wait for this, so now what we got is a very simple, it's gonna use anything from any AI spawners from this wave, but we've got a conveyor belt, so to speak, where this is happening, and then this is happening, and then this is happening. And so this is how you would basically create intermissions, is just the time period in between, right? And then we've got this right here, which is going to be the exact same wave over and over. Let's say we want to get a little bit more creative, and let's say on gameplay start, we are going to, we're going to set it up to where the default or the wave manager is going to be different because we want um, two different groups or 2 different entities of speaking. And so for this side, we are going to actually have something on our team that's going to spawn. And we're going to make it a Marine. I could have just scrolled down. We're going to make it a Marine, though. Just one little Marine, right? Who's going to fight with us. And so we're going to put the grunts kind of over here. We're going to put the Marine kind of in front of us so that he spawns with us. And so we're going to reference this object then as a kind of like a new wave. So I will experiment with this a little bit, and we're just going to take this and we're going to plug this here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say that the Marine is going to spawn after and he's going to be attached to his own wave. So he's going to be user 1, which means we're going to change this to user 1 because we want these to be the same identifier. Just so for future reference, if you ever have to pull the information from this wave, so like if you have to get remaining units inside this wave, you need to compare it. So you would use user 1 as wave type. That would separate it from these waves. So if we go into here and we just kind of pull this over here, we're going to use user 1. So this is going to be a different wave, right? But this is going to be a different wave manager. So this is completely separate from this, even though they're on the same conveyor belt. And we want this to start, instantly with 0 intermissions. So duration in seconds is going to be just 0. And then it should just kind of pull up. And we're going to turn the incoming and the outgoing off because we don't want friendlies to have incoming and outgoing anything. But we're going to keep the budget the same. And so when we start this up, right, it's going to move through. You guys will see how this works. It's going to move from here. It's going to trigger this. And then whenever this wave is defeated, it's then going to trigger this and then this because they're all under default manager. However, when the gameplay starts, it's going to trigger everything as fast as possible. So any different user, like this one, should trigger the second we start the game because this is technically its own setting, like its own wave, its own manager, if that makes sense. This is a different manager, so this is on its own. This is a different conveyor belt. So each wave manager is its own conveyor belt. I hope that this helps. So you'll notice right off the bat, both of these were triggered, but when this one is defeated, we got a friendly grunt too. After 5 seconds, the next wave of default should spawn. Just like that. So, what just happened? Right? Because these guys should not have been here. We've got a friendly grunt too. Let's actually we'll keep him because he's cute. So once we go into here, right? So this is what happens is basically this setup works just as you'd expect it. It works, section 1 happens, and then after section 1 is defeated and the 100% happens, then section 2 happens, right? Where you get that intermission, so that time in between. And then section 3 happens, which is the same exact event, which you could change if you wanted, whatever. But default manager is important because all of these 3 are connected, which means that they are one sequence. When the gameplay starts, it triggers all of these at the same time because they're on one conveyor belt. So which means when this one happens, then this one happens, then this one happens. But because this is also connected to on gameplay start, this is going to be its own sequence, its own conveyor belt. This is the same as this right here, as me doing this. These two are the exact same. I know it's a little bit different and kind of odd, but the only difference is the manager that it's on, right? And so let's say when our Marines are wiped out, we want, or when they're 50% low for default manager, when it goes down to 50%, so when we've killed one of them, because there's only 2 grunts in this squad, when we've killed 1 grunt, it's gonna start the timer right for the intermission, and then it's gonna start the next default wave. However, if we delete the intermission, right, so we don't want any time in between waves, we just want it to be back-to-back combat. This is gonna be directly after this wave is destroyed, then it's gonna start the next wave. So I'll show you guys kind of what that looks like, and we'll go into it. And so once I kill those, right, so we cut that one in half, and then the other 2 spawn instantly because it's still following the same rule as this right here is a wave. It's just getting all of its information from the first wave, but it's still its own wave. That makes sense. Because when you do add wave to a manager, the manager doesn't exist. The manager is just whatever the default is, and if you need if you're getting really into a firefight map or a different maybe you're making a war zone or something a little bit more upscale and you need more than these options here that are given to you. I think there's eight. Yeah, the eight options, which is plenty in my my opinion. But if you need more, you can actually create more. So I think declare, yeah, wave manager or wave variable. So you could make your own. You don't technically have to follow this. If that's easier for you to say like wave one, wave two, wave manager total, whatever, team blue, whatever you want to do, you could declare your own, but I don't need that because I don't need any more than eight, and I kind of understand where this is going. And so let's say we only want this to trigger, right, when these guys are wiped. So the way that you would do that is you would put them on the same manager, right? So the wave type can be whatever, because this is just like helping you identify, okay, this wave is different because it's got Marines. So it's going to be not intermission, not a boss. Boss and default and user 1 through 5 are all the same, right? So the only two that are different are is intermission, which is the time frame in between waves. So it does allow you to create a timer or whatnot, but we want this type to be user 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to reference this, right? So when I kill both or all four of the grunts, then this should spawn. Okay, and there should be zero time frame, zero intermission in between them.
Reinforcements.
Boom, just like that. So the reason that they spawn early is because we have the setting of 50%. So if we change this and we make it 100%, right? So we're now going to declare this as it's still going to be the same wave and use the same AI spawners, right? But we then want the options to be a little different. So instead of 50, we want this one to trigger only 100. So when we kill all enemies now. And so this is going to trigger after we wipe out 50% of the enemies in this list. And then this one is going to trigger this, the next default, after 100% has been killed. So they're all in the same wave manager, right? 1, 2, and 3. And they're all under default. So when I start,
Reinforcements. Reinforcements.
right?
2 enemies remaining. Last enemy.
And then they spawn, just like that. So that, I hope that helps understand, like how the wave managers work and how this can be super useful. So we did talk a little bit earlier too about like what we want. So there's a couple of, just getting into more advanced settings. So if you're not just making a custom games, firefight map or whatnot, because this is really all you would need, but you want to do some special things, right? Some triggers and things like that. Some, oh, when this wave starts, when this wave ends, blah blah blah. This and this happens in my map. Um, so we're gonna do simple AI waves, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna compare victory reasons and compare wave type or compare wave manager. So let's say we'll just kind of go over what all these do, because these are all super good to understand, right? They're all really interesting. They all have their own perks. And then we're going to go into events on AI. So you could do on AI unit killed. You could compare the wave. You could get, the remaining units. And then if everyone is dead, right, then a door unlocks of some kind or a weapon spawns. Or you could even do on any wave start or end. So the difference between, let's say, starting and let's say on wave end is this, you need an extra step. So if we're going to compare this to a branch, right, you would need an extra step here that says, okay, if we want the wave type, right, and we want the wave type to be, let's just say user 1. So when the Marines that are on our team spawn, um, we're going to get that user 1. And this is, so even though they're all under the same manager, we can identify this wave by its type. And so let's say on, wave type, user one, then we spawn something, right? So let's say we spawn a warthog or a falcon or a ghost. We're just going to do a simple razorback. This does mean too that on gameplay start, you need to delete the razorback because you don't want it to be in the game yet. So I'm just going to do grab objects and I'm going to do delete object. So we are going to delete this object, right? So this object's not going to exist and then it's going to start the waves. And then we want to get spawn. Oh, that one. We want to get spawn and we want to reference this object. So let's say that on any wave start, right? And this has you'll notice the difference between these two is there's a lot more info that you can get off of this sequence node than you can this sequence node. But on gameplay start, we're gonna spawn a object, and it's gonna be the Razorback. So we don't need this, and this would be like comparing managers. So like the actual manager you can plug in here, and that would be good if the manager was different. But just for this example, we're gonna use the same manager. So we're going to delete this. And then victory reason is also important. So you can do customs, right? Like custom 1, 2, or 3. Or you can do extermination or duration. Duration is time period. So on the time period, let's say a good thing to use is that when, we could technically reference it. We could give this its own user. And we can say that we can give it a time period of, let's say, like 5 seconds. And then we can say like on wave end instead of start, which is the same node, or it's the same sequence type, but on wave start or end doesn't matter. We can then do the victory reason here, and we can say that the manager was default, and then the victory reason, right, duration of time. So then this one is going to be the only one that it references to time because this is the only uh in the default manager. This is the only wave that has a time limit. So this would be the only one that's triggered, but we don't need that. It's a little bit more advanced. So just kind of stay with me. So the difference, right? And if you're going to be really advanced, um, the reason that I like the top one a lot better is because you don't have to compare 12 different times to get the answer that you want. So there's sometimes, there's sometimes information on this that you need, such as like active squads or AI count, which you can get from the sequence starter. Um, but I like on wave end a lot more because it already gives you the wave manager that you need. And then after that, sorry, then you just need the wave type right there. So it kind of helps you skip an extra step, instead of having to um, then branch wave manager into its own condition. Saves you a couple nodes and just some time. The reason that this is more important is because if you get really complicated with it, you're going to have a lot of different wave managers on their own. So we're just going to skip this step and we're going to use, but it is vital to understand the differences between those two. And so we're going to use the same wave type, right? And we're going to say the wave type, so from default, but we want to pick out this one is separate. So this is going to be user one. And we're going to put this back to default. And we're going to say on user one ended, right? Then we're going to spawn the Razorback. So, and I say end. I think I need to put start. Well, actually, tell you what. So, because that wave is technically on our team, so in order for it to end, I'd have to kill them. But let's say we want to do a special list. Let's say we have a ton of these waves, right? Back to back to back, and then boom, we get to the end of the default line that we want. We want a user. So we're gonna identify the last wave by the type of wave that it has. And so we're gonna say on default end, so on this wave end, if its user is 8, then it's gonna spawn the Warthog. At the same time, then the Marines are gonna spawn because the Marines are attached to the same manager. So let's just get into it. There's no
Reinforcements.
warthog, right? We're gonna kill these grunts.
Two enemies
And then
remain.
on this end,
Last enemy.
so the second I kill this guy, should spawn both the warthog and the marines, just like that. So you can use this for a multitude of things. You could use this for spawning things. You could use it for destroying things, maybe a bridge, maybe weaponry, maybe advancements or whatnot. But I hope that this kind of tells you what the differences are between wave managers and wave manager types, and why it's important to understand it, because no one really goes over it. No one really talks about it in detail, so it is important to understand. It's important to know. Um, if you wanted, like I said before, just to kind of go back over it, if you wanted the Marines to spawn instantly, right, you just have to attach them to a different wave manager, not the wave type, right? And so let's say this gets really complicated and you start using the same wave type as the manager, right? So like both of these are the same wave type, but they're under different managers. Then that would be good to either use this one. Um, sorry, but they're going to be under the same managers. So on default, we've got the same wave type. Is going to be here and here. So then it's going to spawn. So we don't want that. So what do we do next? We then identify this manager as a different manager. And so, like, let's say we want to just do mode, right? We won't make it too complicated. And then we're going to go to AI waves. Nope. AI events. And we're going to do on any wave start or end. But end would mean that we'd have to kill them all. So we're going to do on any wave start. And we're going to compare and make sure that the wave, sorry, not that. We're going to AI waves. We're going to compare wave manager, right? Wave manager with the wave type. So if we want to get this one exactly, and let's say they are the same, default, and then user. Let's say they're the exact same. We could have used the other default one, and then we could have just gotten the user one. But like, let's say this is going to be the same user, but it's going to be a different wave. So technically, this is on its own. This is going to start instantly, right? And so on this start, we want to wait 1 second, and then we want to spawn in the warthog, right? So let's say this scenario would be good, whereas you have too many nodes, and everything is getting a little confusing, and you need to be able to identify this user type between this user type. Now you could use the default. You could say, user type blah blah blah, or we could use default, so everything spawns at the same time, but the user is going to be different. So there's a ton of different ways to get this information that you need. Um, like let's say it's the same default, or let's say we're using the same wave type, right? But with the other node, we'd have to set only one. And so let's say that it equals map, and let's say the user's one. These both are using the same wave type. We have to then separate it by the wave manager. So then we have to do, if this is the wave manager, okay, we're going to wait 1 second before the game starts. And if this wave manager has started, and this is the branch, and the same, the same user type here as the same as here and here, then spawn the Razorback. And so if we go into it,
Reinforcements.
right, that's started, and then after 1 second, it spawns the Warthog. So
Two
I didn't
enemies
realize how
remain.
far away it was, but yeah, it spawns after 1 second. Even
Reinforcements.
though
Two
the second
enemies
that the game
remain.
starts, it's deleted. So there's, hope this helps. I hope that this is, a good reference YouTube video. But if you guys enjoyed it, if it did help you or whatnot, if you have any questions or anything like that, please comment or subscribe. It does help me stay motivated to create more content. If you do have questions, I do have a Discord that you guys can join. There's going to be a link in the bio. Other than that, I really hope that this helped. And if you guys need anything else or have any other questions, just let me know. Thank you so much for watching.